Hello, the internet, and welcome back to another episode of Dbacks Dispatch. We are your hosts, Gabriel and Brandon. Despite the fact that this is the off season, there actually is quite a bit of news that we have to talk about, so stay tuned for that. But if this is your first time joining us here at Dbacks Dispatch, I want to appreciate everyone who's coming in here, who is new, who are older listeners. Thank you for coming in. You can catch us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts or wherever you may listen to your podcast after the fact. If you're watching us on YouTube or this is your first time on YouTube, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so that way you never miss another episode. You can also see us on Twitter, on Discord, on TikTok, on Instagram. We are everywhere at Dbacks Dispatch. We also have written articles on AZ Snake Pit by our great producer Josh, and sometimes our other co-host Brett will also write some articles as well. So a lot of great content on there to keep you busy during the off season if you're looking for Dbacks content. So let's get to it. The biggest news, I think, is the fact that we had actual 3 Diamondbacks who got the Silver Slugger award. It was Corbin, Carroll, Geraldo, Perdomo, and Ketel, Marte. I don't think there's any real surprises personally about, the fact that they won in general. But I want to get your thoughts first, Brandon. Like, were any of these a shock to you? I think for me personally, if there's any sort of shock, it would be Perdomo. Not so much because he didn't deserve it, but because the media just loves guys like Trey Turner and Francisco Lindor. But I want to get your thoughts first. Were them getting the sweep in these 3 categories? Was that a surprise to you? And do you think any of them could have been like, you know, was there anybody that you would have chosen above any of these guys?
The only one that you could say was a surprise, even though we all knew he was deserving, was Perdomo. I thought they were. I really thought they were going to give it to Lindor because he did hit more homers, but I think overall Perdomo had a better offensive season at shortstop than Lindor. I mean, hitting almost near 300, 20 homers, 100 runs driven in is like you can't do any better. You can't ask for anything more. So um, that was my only fear was that he wasn't gonna get it. I'm like, please get this right. Give Perdomo his flowers. Like this was his best season. And it's weird because he didn't make the All Star team, but he made an All Star team in the past with worse numbers, but he had a great first half that year in 23. So it makes sense why he made it that year. And he continue, and we've said it on this podcast at nauseum. He improves in something every season. What I want to see him not necessarily improve, but don't fall off is that power. Continue to hit the 15 to 20 homers. That's the one thing with Pernob that I want to see because I don't know what else he can improve other than on defense. There's still a lot he can work on defensively. I think that would also be another area of improvement. Marte, not a shock, best second baseman in all of Major League Baseball, and it's not even close. Like if they didn't, the numbers that Ketel had this season when he missed pretty much a whole month. Yeah, 283, 28, 72 with 136 hits. And he missed 30 days. So probably give him 4 or 5 homers in that span, maybe 10 RBI. He finished with a 4.4 B WAR in just 480 at bats. Like that's really impressive to me. Yeah, he only played in 126 games too. So he missed at least a month. So and then Carroll, I guess I was a little shocked that he got it. I don't know. I guess I thought there were other outfielders that did better. Because I know he had a lot of extra base hits, but his average wasn't very high. That was
Yeah,
the
that's one
one
I was
thing.
slightly confused with. I'm like, was Juan Soto not counted as a left or a right fielder? Like that's what I was a little confused. I'm like, if he
No,
was an NL.
so outfield is just outfield. It's the top 3 guys in the outfield, which I believe Juan Soto got one of them. So it's not left field, center field, right field. It's
Okay.
like in the All Star game,
The
it's the
best
top
offense.
3. So it was Carroll, Soto, and Kyle Tucker. And a lot of people said like, is it like did Kyle Tucker really have that great a year? Yeah, like Carroll's average wasn't that great, but he had a lot of extra base hits. His average, yeah, 259 this year, but he had 17 triples, 32 doubles, 31 home runs, with a 5.8 B WAR. So really impressive. It's funny, you have 3 Silver Sluggers, but you don't win the team Silver Slugger award. How does that happen? Like I think we had 2 last year, Silver Sluggers, most of out of any team, and we didn't. And we had the best offense in the league last season. Also, didn't win the team Silver Slugger. That went to the Dodgers, just like it did this year, who didn't have any Silver Sluggers. Like that, just it doesn't make sense to me. I mean, it kind of does because it's the Dodgers. But congrats there to the fellas. I still think it's the best 3-hitter stretch out of any team in Major League Baseball. I think it's still even better if you just go based on numbers, because Mookie didn't have that great of a year. Like I was like, well, the Dodgers, Tawny, Betts, and Freeman. But if you look at numbers wise, especially if everyone is so obsessed with WAR, the WAR between those three was like 17 or 18 between Carroll, Marte, and Perdomo. That's insane. And you don't even make the playoffs. Just shows how bad the rest of the lineup is.
Yeah, I think that's kind of one of the biggest problems. I mean, we're going to discuss it later on, but just the fact that at least for in the first half, we still had Gino, who was on a 50, 60 home run pace, and Naylor, who was on a tear of his own as well. So we had at least those guys to rely on. These guys were struggling, but obviously after the All-Star break, that lineup was really, really weak. But quickly, I just want to say what's up to Dank. Says, what up, players, and long time no listen to. How are you doing? How are you feeling? Because, I think all of us here at Dbacks Dispatch, we're all very interested in this offseason. I think it's probably one of the more interesting offseason that we've had in quite a while, just because we have so many holes to fill in this team. And, one of those things that, we just talked about now. And, we had 3 Silver Sluggers, and we missed the playoffs by quite a few games. We were under 500. In any other normal season where you don't have a historic collapse like the Mets, this team would have been out of contention the first week of September. But because the Mets were just terrible, they at least had a bit of a chance to make it into them. And these 3 guys were instrumental in that because of just how incredible they were and how clutch they were. I'm very curious to see where Perdomo is next year in the lineup. I think he is a number 1 type hitter. In the perfect world, I think I would rather have him, Corbin, and then Marte. Excuse me, sorry. But I know they used Perdomo a lot in the third hole. I mean, he does drive in a lot of runs, but I just think that on base is just way too ridiculous. And they're, in the second half of the season, there's just nobody to drive in Perdomo the way there was early on. If he would have had Gino behind him or Naylor, or even Moreno early on in the season, I think he would be fine in the third spot. But because of that, it's a little bit different now, and so they need guys to be able to drive in guys like Perdomo and Corbin and Marte. So for me personally, that would be my my lineup. Those 2, 3, that 1, 2, 3 at the top. But what do you think about that? Would you keep Perdomo in the third hole, or do you think they should move him up to the number 1?
I go back and forth on this quite a bit. I think those 3 are so interchangeable. You really could do any sort of mix. So many different combos with those. As long as those 3 are in the top 3 of the order, I'm okay with it. Now, obviously, left-handed, you're probably going to put Marte at the top. And, it really depends. Who do you want to get the most at-bats in a game? What's more important? Because that's really what you need to think about, because there's a lot of times where you might have a really bad game and only the top 2 get that 5th at bat. Most of the time, a lot of guys don't even see that 5th plate appearance. A lot of them only get 4. So you got to think.
Yeah, I mean the difference
who do
from
you want late in the game there? For me, it's Perdomo.
Yeah, I mean the difference from the number 1 spot to the number 3 spot, it can end up being about 100 at bats a season. So at that point, it just depends on who do you want to have those, close to 700 at bats. Is it going to be Perdomo or Carroll or Marte? And like you said, I do think, as of right now, would prefer Perdomo, even though I think Marte, obviously, far and away, is the better hitter overall because he has the contact, he has the power, he has the on base skills over Perdomo. Perdomo is just gets on base at such a ridiculous clip and is so incredibly clutch.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people will argue about that sort of stat and be like, there's no such thing as clutch. But, I mean, if you look at the numbers, Perdomo has a 389 on base and Ketel had a 376. So it is higher, but it's not such a huge difference where he has a 330 on base or something like that. It's close enough that, like you said, like any one of these guys being up on that up in that lineup, it's interchangeable enough. Ketel with the 145 OPS plus, and Perdomo with the 136 plus. So it is kind of a pick your poison type of situation because the OPS plus is just taking out the average and then that 100 being average, and then so it's just like what percentage. So in this case, Ketel was like 45% better than league average, and Perdomo was what did I say, 39% higher. So again, you can't necessarily go wrong with any of these guys with Corbin or Perdomo or Ketel. But just quickly for a comparison, because there were a lot of people upset that Lindor didn't get the Silver Sluggers because, again, he did hit more home runs. He had 11 more home runs than Perdomo. But if you look at the OPS plus, he's at 129. Again, Perdomo was at 136. So comparing 36% better than league average and 29% league average, the choice is clear. So even though he had the home runs, but Lindor truly didn't have anything else other than the home runs. His on base was relatively low, 346 at 466 and 811 OPS. Perdomo was at 851, so 40 points higher. There really shouldn't have been much of a discussion in this case, but I understand why there was one. Again, just because Perdomo isn't a household name, which is why a guy like Kyle Schwarber got the nomination for MVP over Perdomo. Which
about that
you
one,
haven't talked about it. I guess we can
Oh,
just if
that.
we want to or not, because that is one of those things where I am like, Soto, I understand, but I'm like, this has just become the glorified DH award because come on, I mean, Kyle Schwarber,
Yeah.
he did have a lot of home runs, but that was it. Schwarber has nothing other to his game other than just being able to hit home runs because he had 56 home runs, which is amazing, but he batted 240.
Yeah.
Batted 240, 360 on base. Obviously the slugging, so that's going to keep him up higher. But he had a 150 OPS plus. But Perdomo had 2.5 WAR higher. I know obviously like it just depends on defense and everything else, but just the fact that guys can that he could just get on base in the way that Schwarber can. Like this guy was a glorified, I mean he is a glorified DH, but I just mean like the award itself is just rewarding the DH types, and I don't know. Like I don't really like the direction where things are heading, but I do understand why they would do that. Just because again the home runs, but the guy with the 4.5 WAR compared to a guy with the 7 WAR, the guy with the second highest WAR in the league behind Otani, and if you look at his position WAR, he is the highest. He is the player with the highest position WAR. So it's just crazy. Like, I guess we will talk about it then. So, quickly, just Disruptive, how's it going? Dank, I didn't know you're in a band. What do you play? But yeah, so what were your thoughts when the nominations came in for the MVPs, and you saw that not only was Perdomo not on there, but we had Soto and Schwarber in there as well.
Like you said, Soto, I don't blame it. He was 2 stolen bases away from a 40-40 season, and and he had a decent average. Actually, it didn't. I thought it was way higher. It's only 263. It's his like he has a 160 OPS plus, a 921 OPS. Like he had a really really good season. Because it's funny, if you would have asked people in April, they thought he was not living up to his contract. They're like, oh, overpaid. So I don't have an issue with Soto. It's the Schwarber one. Like it's just homers. He just hits so many homers. That's why his OPS plus is higher than Perdomo's. Like he hit over 50 home runs. So it was kind of a bummer. Like I still think Perdomo's going to get some MVP, but if someone finishes above him at 4, I'm going to be not pleased. Like I'm hoping like he just missed the cut for being a finalist. Like he's like right behind, because I personally I think it's Otani, Soto. I would have said Perdomo, but I guess it's Schwarber. So I just it's not like most of the time I'll complain East Coast bias. It's more of big market bias, big
Yeah.
market media bias with this, because they probably just they don't need to watch Otani because the media just loves Otani, because how can you not? He's a fantastic player. Like I'm not gonna dispute that Shohei Otani is not a good baseball player, but they probably don't watch Diamondback games. A lot of people that voted, they probably are on the East Coast, and they only watch games that were in their time zone. So they probably didn't get to watch a lot of what Perdomo did, and they probably just did a lot of box score watching or went to baseball reference and saw his stats, and they're like, yeah, it's okay, but I'm sorry. Like, when you have, outside of Otani, the best WAR, and how everyone is obsessed with WAR, saying that that truly shows how good or bad a player is, how can you not reward that? So, that kind of sucks for Perdomo. He probably doesn't care. But I do.
Yeah. I mean, maybe he does. He was a bit upset that he wasn't chosen for the All Star game. But then again, I mean, the All Star game I think is a little bit different. And I mean, you can say MVP is more valuable, but at the end of the day, it's like it's the Shohei Otani award at this point. Like
It will
in
be
the National League,
because
you got 10
he just
years
has to
until.
play. He just
Yeah.
has to play consistent. Like if he just if he misses 2 months, I don't know if they'll give it to him. But as
Yeah.
long as
With Otani, the
he
thing
hit
is,
50 homers in back-to-back
if he
seasons.
has a couple of mediocre years, that he would probably still win it because he's doing it both. If he has a mediocre season, let's say 3.5 ERA, 150 innings plus pitch, then that's good enough. And if he has 35 home runs, 100 RBI, in each individual season might not get him actual MVP votes, but when he's doing both of them, he is the MVP. He is the most valuable player in the league and one of the most valuable players ever. And again, like you said, the media market and the media bias is involved in this case, and it's good for baseball that he is as valuable as he is, and it would be hard. I feel like it would be really hard to argue with that. Like I said, if I name those numbers, even though sure they might not win anybody else an MVP individually, but when you put them together, that's still like an 8 or 9 WAR season for one player. So, or at least for Otani, and a 4.5, 4.5 WAR for one player, 9 WAR for Otani. So it is what it is in this case, and maybe Perdomo is a little bit upset, but again, these are competitors. These guys are trying to win and are trying to be the best they can. So he should just use it as a bulletin board material. Come back next season, hit 25 home runs, hit 30 home runs, work out in with whoever you need to work out with. Work out with Gino. Try to figure out how he hit so many home runs. So I just think with someone like
Launch
Perdomo,
angle. That's what it
I,
is with
I
Gino.
think it's
It's that
that.
launch angle.
But I think he's just such a good contact hitter, and he has such a good eye from the zone that
He
he
does.
doesn't want to trade it for power. But we've called him Juan Soto without the power, and so I do think, hey, if Juan Soto can have that power while having that eye for the zone and for that contact rate, I know Juan Soto is special, but that doesn't mean that a guy like Perdomo can't become truly special, even more so than he already is. Again, he's only about 25 years old. He has a couple years until he enters the prime of his career. He is under contract, so again, we look forward to seeing what else we can get out of Perdomo, and
I mean,
maybe
his
we
on
can
base
see.
wasn't that much different from Juan Soto. It was only 7
No,
points different. So
yeah. So I'm
it's
like that's what
just
I'm
the
saying. He has
slugging.
the eye for the zone and the contact. It's just that slugging, and I mean, if he turns to a 40-40 type of guy, I think that would be just the absolute steal of the century. But again,
He'd be tested for something every
immediately.
day for like a week. They're like,
Oh yeah,
you got to be on something. You go from having what I think his best year was like 7 homers, that goes to 20,
Yeah, it
and then
goes on
goes
to
to
like 20.
40.
Yeah.
It'd be
I
like,
mean, unless we see him
um,
absolutely, the only thing I would look for is just the swing speed. If he finds a way to adjust his swing speed, then I do think a lot of the power will come because guys like Shohei, if you see how hard and violent that swing is, like he
Carroll.
swings so incredibly hard. Same with Carroll
Carroll
again.
this past year, swing speed increased by a decent amount.
Yeah. So I think that's maybe that's what he has to work on. And like you said, the a lot of the power will come through and a lot of the slugging. So it's not just home runs. It will be a lot of doubles and triples that he's going to be able to hit if he's able to do that. Because we've seen guys who have really slow swing speeds who have good contact, like Arias makes a lot of good contact, but just no power behind that. So he is also an interesting guy to watch. I mean, if the D-backs go after him as a DH, I wouldn't be mad. I know there's a lot of people say he has no value, but I mean, if he's batting, you know,
He would be a
in the
really
third
good
spot.
3 hole hitter
That's the thing.
if
It's
you
like
get
they have
guys
him
on
as a
base
number
for him.
one. It's because the problem with him is that he has no other than just the contact and hit rate. He doesn't really have anything else. He can't run. He can't field. But if you have him at the third spot and this team relies on their speed, because Perdomo can run relatively well. He's a good base runner. That's what he is. He's a good base runner, and Carroll obviously is an elite runner in general. So you put him at the three hole. I feel like you have a lot of runs. Like we always talked about with someone like Carroll, a single for him is an automatic triple. So if you have a Raz there, he gets a little single in the gap. Carroll is going to be on third before you know it, if not going to home already. And then if you have Marte behind them, again drives in another run. So I do think this team could become really deadly if they go after a guy like Arias. But that's not what we're here talking about yet. We will have a free agent watch episode coming up soon. But the other news that we got was that the Diamondbacks extended a qualifying offer to their ace pitcher, Zach Gallen, and they will receive draft pick compensation if he turns it down and signs for, I believe it was 50 million, right?
50 million is the
50
threshold.
million. As of right now, a lot of the projections have him about 4 and 80 million per year, if not a little bit more. There was one report that came out that was 5 for 125, I believe, or something like that. But again, it's just a huge discrepancy in his case, just because he just wasn't the Zach Gallen that we knew in the years past. I think if he would have pitched as well as he had been before, you're talking two or even close to $300 million range. But as of right now, it seems like it's short-term deals that are going to be extended to him. But what were your thoughts overall on this? Did you agree with this? Because I knew halfway through the season, the entire fan base was like, "Don't even give him the qualifying offer because he might accept it, and we don't want him back at all." But I mean, I think a lot of people's tune changed because of his second half. He seemed to return to vintage Zach Gallen, but the qualifying offer is worth $22 million, so it's not like it's a small amount. It is quite a bit of a chunk of change compared to what he was making last year. I believe it's about a 10 million dollar bump in pay. Um, and this team has talked about them reducing payroll, so this would actually make payroll go up quite a bit. So, what were your thoughts? One, did you agree with the Diamondbacks giving the qualifying offer, and do you think he's going to accept it?
I don't think he's going to accept it because of who his agent is. I think if he didn't have Scott Boras as his agent, maybe there's a chance. Maybe he wants to bet on himself for the 1 year. I don't see him accepting it. Do I think he's worth 22 million a year? If you give us second half Gallen for a whole season, yes. That's the thing is since really All-Star break of 2023, Zach Gallen was not the Zach Gallen that we all knew and love. He was too inconsistent for me. He'd have one really good start where he looks like an ace. Then he'd have one really bad start where he looks like he's not even a top 60 starting pitcher in Major League Baseball. So it's difficult. So the threshold there being 50 million. So if he signs for less, basically we get a competitive balance round B pick. Signs for 50 million or more. It's between the first round and competitive balance round A. So either way, we're getting a draft pick back, which is cool. But we need starting pitching. We need starting pitching, and we know that he can pitch well, Will he pitch well is a whole nother story. I don't think he accepts it. I just I don't know who's like. I know the Mets need starting pitching. Yankees need starting pitching. We know how well he pitches in New York. I saw a prediction video that Angels offer him like 2 years, 45, which is right around that qualifying offer amount, just for another year. So, like, I'm kind of on the fence. Like, if he accepts it, cool. We got another starting pitcher, our front line starting pitcher. If he doesn't, oh well. Like, I'm not like, I'm not gonna be sad if he doesn't come back. But if he does, I'll be okay with it.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same line as you, but I guess, to make things interesting, I'll say that Zach Gallen does return to the Diamondbacks because if he was going to um, move on, he would have already, I think. They have until the 18th to accept the qualifying offer or not. And literally, as soon as the offers went out and, the league made it available, so many guys came off the board. Like, we're talking about Imanaga. Imanaga immediately just chose free agency. And there's a lot of guys who immediately chose free agency. And Zach Gallen didn't. And I think he recognizes that he doesn't have the same amount of, I guess, pull in the league that he did before, especially compared to, like I said, a couple of years ago. A couple of years ago, again, you were talking about a guy who was worth $30 million a year. I think this year he's lucky to get anywhere from 15 million to 20 million. For at least a couple of years, because when we've talked about teams that can afford players, it's only like a select few. It's 5 to 6 teams in this league that are willing to spend and that have the money to spend. And I don't think any of them are going to be willing to offer him, 25 million a year. It would have to be a team, like you said, like the Angels, who, sorry, I don't think they're going to be competitive next season, but they need pitching, and we've seen it before that they just throw money at guys and kind of hope that they turn out to be decent or good, or to have good seasons like we saw with Rendon. Rendon has played like 70 games total. They're giving the man $30 million a year, and he's played a handful of games. So, but pitching is a commodity in this league. I mean, we've seen guys go for way more money than they're truly worth, but it's because the market dictates the value. And maybe a guy like Gallen, maybe there is a team that's willing to take a flyer out on it. Maybe Detroit, maybe even Cleveland, although Cleveland isn't known for spending money, but they could, have him in that pitching lab. I mean, they have Saccone there. Maybe he can help drive that conversation and say, like, look, like, this is what we could find in him that there might be the actual underlying issue that for some reason the Diamondbacks can't get to. Same with Tampa. So who knows, any of those smaller market teams might be willing to take a flyer on him. But I do think, at least for me, I think it would make sense for Gallen to take this 1 year deal because he's only 30. He's not a guy who's entering 33, 34 age season. He's still really young. His velo has stayed relatively steady. It hasn't been like he's, throwing 89 right now. If he was throwing 89, then yeah, immediately don't even give him an offer. But there was times last season when he was throwing about 95, especially once he got some of his mechanics down. 94, 95, you put him on a better team, he could be around that same spot. And again, he's only 30 years old. It's not like he has a ton of wear and tear on that elbow either or that shoulder. So I do think he has a lot of value in this league, but I do think in terms of the value there, the team that would value him the most is the Diamondbacks because they know him. He likes it here. And I know it's Scott Boras and he never accepts qualifying offers. But again, this isn't a normal player. This isn't the Zach Gallen that we know. This is a totally different guy. This is a guy with the 4.5 ERA who was terrible in that first half. Who knows what his true market value is? And I do think he's one of the more interesting players, not just for the Diamondbacks, but in general, coming into this offseason. Is what is he going to get? What is his offer going to look like? Because we've seen guys get 1 year prove-it deals, and with Zach Gallen, that just might be it. I mean, it's worked out with other guys in the past. Look at Pete Alonso. Pete Alonso's going to get paid a lot of money this offseason. And last year he took a show me deal. Alex Bregman basically took a show me deal. He's going to make a lot of money. He's a 7-war player. There's a lot of guys who are going to be getting big contracts that they wouldn't have otherwise. But in the comments, I guess, what do you guys think? Should have the D-backs extended him this offer, and do you think he's going to accept it? But what are your
If he
thoughts on?
does, Mike Hazen, the first call you make, James McCann.
Yes,
If that is not your first call after, or re-sign him before, he still would be a solid backup for Gabby. Like, I really, and I know technically we did make a signing the last few days. We did sign Ramos Garcia to a minor league deal. He's not a major league quality player, so.
yeah. But what are your thoughts on what I'm saying now? Do you have any sort of inkling on agreeing with me that I do think he would take that deal, and I do think it would be beneficial for the Diamondbacks to take that deal?
Based on what you said on the fact that he hasn't declined it like right away, like I didn't think about that. Like I just assumed that he was going to. Maybe he's just taking his time to make sure, but maybe he is really considering because there was an interview near the end of the year where he really he loves it here. He loves the state of Arizona. So maybe he is considering taking that 1-year deal because he realizes he's not worth a long-term deal. Like he still has more to prove. So does he go and come back and do a prove-year deal with the Arizona Diamondbacks? Because it is at least a guaranteed contract. We don't know if someone's going to sign him because these teams don't want to give up a draft pick because that's where it comes from. It comes from the team that signs them. So they lose that draft pick. Just like I believe we lost one when we traded for Josh Naylor. So,
I guess that would enter the conversation that we're going to have next about draft picks and prospects, which is like, what do you value more, proven talent or a guy or a lottery ticket? Because in this case, I mean, if you look at the comp picks that we've had some good ones, but there hasn't been any. But like Corbin, Carroll wasn't a comp pick. Perdomo wasn't a comp pick. Like our best players haven't been comp picks. So, as it is still early enough in some of these guys' minor league careers, so we probably won't know for a little bit while longer. But it is something I think to think about is where this team is headed, what they want to do, because we always talk about them saying they're retooling, not rebuilding, but what is this season going to be? Is this a retooling or is this a rebuilding year? Because if it's a rebuilding/retooling year, then you just got to give guys run, like a Tommy Troy's, Waldschmidt, Lawler. Like all these guys need to play every single day, if that's what it is. And if it isn't, then you got to go out there and sign guys, and you got to sign frontline starters like Zach Gallen. But we don't know exactly how much this team is going to spend. This team did have, not necessarily record attendance, but comparatively to the last 10 years or so, it did have record attendance. And even with some of those TV deals and stuff like that, Ken Kendrick has made it clear that they did make good money this year. It wasn't as good as making the playoffs, but they did make some good chunk of change this year. So they could spend less without it being, cutting payroll the way the Pirates or someone else does like that. So they're going to have to spend either way. We're not exactly sure what that payroll is going to be opening day, but obviously it can change and fluctuate in the meantime. But that leads us into our next topic. But quickly, I want to welcome in William. Welcome on in. There's a Trepanator. Says someone looks paid. I don't know who. It's someone in the comments or one of us.
So this person has commented this before. I don't know who they're referencing.
Yeah, so maybe it's both of us. Red Sox Nation, how's it going? How's Corbin Barrels? And yeah, like Dank Lemon says, I think they'll try to sign him, but he isn't going to be a D-back next season. That's kind of my feelings on it. I do feel like they probably will just have him for one more season and see how things go. Again, like it is Scott Boras. If they wanted to reject the deal, I feel like they would have already.
Yeah.
And the fact that we're about 9 days, if not 8 days away from the deadline tells me that they're not so willing to accept the deal. And who knows? Maybe the Diamondbacks are talking, an extension with him. We don't exactly know, but it could be one of those like, look, we'll give you 22 million for that year or 25 million for next season, then you have an opt out. So that way he gets a little bit of more money, but also while having, the option to actually be able to opt out of his contract. And if he has a great year, maybe some Cy Young votes, then he's able to go, really pivot off of that and go with another team for a lot more money than he would have for this season. But for the next topic, I think we're going to talk about the fact that Mike Hazen just straight up came out and said that they're willing to trade, quote unquote, top prospects. He didn't specify which top prospects, but he said his team is going to be willing to trade, which is honestly a huge change, I think, from what we've heard in other seasons where they basically called a lot of guys untouchable. And the fact that he's willing to trade top prospect, I think, says a lot. He says, when they asked him about, like, they're willing to trade, and he said, I don't want to do that, but I think at some point, if I'm going to get somebody a value, I'm going to have to give up, quote, value. It is, it just is what it is. I don't know what the market is going to look like trade-wise. So we've talked about, this team not necessarily spending a ton of money, and trade is the way that they're not willing to, spend that money. So maybe they trade for a guy like they did last year with Josh Naylor, relatively low contract, while giving up a guy like Saccone. He wasn't necessarily a top prospect, but they got value for value. And in this case, I think both teams, at least for the first half of the Dbacks, they both were winners in this case. The Guardians got good value, and the Diamondbacks had gotten good value for Josh Naylor. And this team just has way too many holes, and I think there's no way they can fill all these holes that they have right now without spending 200 plus. There's just no way they're going to be able to do that, because as of right now, there's no first baseman, there's no third baseman, there's no left fielder. We have 2 vacant starting pitching spots, or 3.
I think it's
2,
3.
right? 3 right now. So our only 2 confirmed starters are Ryan Nelson and Brandon Pfaadt, I believe. Oh, and Erod.
Erod. So 2.
Erod, so it's 2, but you want at least 3, obviously, because we saw what happened last season.
4 or 5 at that point.
So that's already 5 guys, 6 guys. There's no backup catcher. That's 7 guys. So that's 7 major league talent ready guys that this team has to go out and get. And again, unless you're bargain bin shopping, paying these guys $5 million, we just saw Max Muncy go for $10 million. Max Muncy does not seem like a $10 million guy. His value would be a lot lower than that. But again, that would, even if they go out and get those $10 million guys, that would be still $70 million. And that would probably put them over $200 million and more what they were actually looking to spend for this offseason. So it seems like the answer is going to come from within, from the farms, whether it's Lawler, Waldschmidt, Troy, Yumin Lin, Mena. Like, some of these guys are going to have to take up that mantle as well as being traded away. But what were your thoughts, Brandon, on what Mike Hazen said? Do you think he's actually going to do it, or do you think this is more of a, like, him putting it out there just in case there's a team that's willing to maybe overspend a little bit?
I don't think he's going to do it. I truly don't. He's held on to Alec Thomas and Jake McCarthy for so long that they literally, neither one of them have value. The only way that you get rid, and that's who I think he should try to trade first, is one of those 2. But I don't think you can trade Jake McCarthy without packaging him with somebody else. That's the only way you're going to get rid of Jake McCarthy. Alec, maybe have him be like the more high value trade piece in a trade. Jake is going to have to be like number 3 if you're including more than one, because Jake literally has no value. Alec at least has his defense, which some teams have called about him in the past, and Hazen said no. Now, if we're talking about actual prospects, I still think Jordan Lawler can be something. I don't want to give up on him yet. But I know the fan base, a good portion of the fan base thinks they already know what he's going to be, and that's a bust. I'm like, how can you tell? He hasn't even had 300 at-bats. consistent at bats. That's what I want to see. I want to see him play every day for like 2 or 3 months in a row. If he hits 240 in that span with a sub 600 OPS, then I will be on that train saying that yeah, maybe he's just not it. But I'm not willing to say that yet. I would be okay with Tommy Troy going because we do have such an influx of middle infielders. He's played like they've had him at shortstop, second base, and center field. So I think that positional versatility could get you something. We need bullpen. That's what I want more than anything. Is I want legit high leverage guys back there. We don't have that right now. So, and that's probably who, if they do trade Lawler, that's what I want. I want to. That's funny. There was a report that says that the Dbacks want young, controllable arms, and Jeff in our Discord is like, yeah, so does every other team. Like that. Like that's what these teams want. They do want those young, controllable arms. So, yeah. We'll see if he does it. I personally don't think that he will. Um, I think he likes having those guys there for whatever reason. Like I'm like, if you want to compete with the Dodgers, you're gonna have to deal some of these prospects.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the unfortunate fact. I mean, you can't hoard prospects forever. Like at some point, these guys are going to age out. As we've seen, there's quite a few guys entering the Rule 5 that we all had high hopes for. I believe Christian Robinson is a Rule 5
Is
eligible.
Because I've seen somewhere he is and isn't. So I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, I think the issue with him is just because of the way, because of his issues that he had. It's just not the same as, like that. It wouldn't be like a normal timeline, but I'm not exactly sure. I'm gonna have to look it up. But they had quite a few guys I think are gonna be eligible soon for that sort of thing. Let's see. I'm looking up the list real quick, see if I can find one. But yeah, you can't hoard them forever because if you do, then again they just kind of rot in the minor leagues, and eventually you have to either roll fire them or outright them, and then at that point it's like they can go and become a star for another team because you just weren't able to make them be great here. Corbin Barrels, welcome on in. You are late, like Red Sox Nation says. Are you even a true fan if you show up late? Corbin Barrels, it's his birthday, 35th birthday. I hope you're having a good one. Was it Brett's birthday as well, or is it just his anniversary?
No, so his birthday is Tuesday. His wife's birthday is today. Their anniversary is tomorrow. Then his birthday's on Tuesday.
Oh, yeah, it's crazy, but yeah, I hope you're having a good one, Corbin Barrels. But yeah, it's just one of those things where I don't know. Like I truly don't know what Hazen is thinking in this case because what does he consider a top prospect, and what does the league consider their top prospects? I think you're going to get two different answers, honestly, because I do think he would consider a guy like Yumin Lin a top prospect, but as of right now, he had a 4.5 ERA, and I know it is the PCL and stuff, but still, it's 4.5. I think it might have even been close to 6 ERA. So I mean, he did have the selective service thing, which isn't really selective in Taiwan, but selective service. So he did miss quite a bit of time there. So it does take a bit of time to be. It's like him coming back from a pretty big injury for the amount of time that he missed. So I don't know. This is again probably one of the more interesting D-backs off seasons in a good way and a bad way, just because we just don't know what this team is planning to do, and if they're planning to do anything soon. Because we're about, I guess, 3 weeks away from the winter meetings, if not a little bit longer. And this team kind of isn't known for doing anything during the winter meetings. They usually wait until
that they're not doing anything during the winter meetings. So,
thank you, Lyman. Have a good night. Stay safe. But again, that could change. We've seen Mike Hazen change his tune a little bit before when he's mentioned, like, with Marte, the whole report about him being like, yeah, we're open to trading Marte. because it wasn't so much that he said they're open to it as he said, very specific lawyer language, which is what he said in this case, which is the right offer. If the right offer comes across and
There
it's too
is no
good to
right
pass
offer.
up, then maybe he would be willing. And that is unfortunately something I've heard thrown out there with Marte, with the value that he has. You could get a couple of controllable starters with that contract that he has and with his value, but it just depends if this team is going to be willing to do that. Can this team replace Marte from within? No, they just can't. Unless, again, if Jordan Lawler goes off this season and becomes better than Marte, then maybe you would be willing to trade that contract and get controllable pitching. But as of right now, there just truly isn't anyone that's willing that's going to be comparable to Marte. Like I'm thinking about some of the pitchers around there. It would have to be Scooble. I mean, I know it's
Tigers would
saying
hang
Scooble's a
up the
lot,
phone so fast.
but here's the
Can
thing:
someone say no?
Scooble's gonna be a free agent after next season. That's 1 year of control. Marte has what 4 years left, 5 years with that extension, and one of the biggest issues with the Tigers was their offense. So it would be 1 year of Scooble and against 5 years of Marte. I personally would still probably want Marte just because of the amount of years, because Scooble can be amazing here, but he is just one guy. He is one pitcher. One pitcher's not going to bring you the World Series, but a guy being there consistently day in and day out. And we saw who he is in the playoffs as well. He won NLCS MVP. So he is a guy that can power this offense, put this entire team on his back in the way that Scooble couldn't. During that, what was it, that 13-game losing streak or whatever that they had, the Tigers, Scooble pitched a couple times in that. And he was able to help them power through a win. And Marte, we've seen him end losing streaks here. So, excuse me. But Corbin Barrels here is saying that he's upset that they got approval to invest in the stadium. They have been filling the stadium. The team is good. Now we're back to cutting payroll. And I think that's just one of those things that I'll never understand, is weird chicken or egg logic that these teams have, especially the Diamondbacks, where they're like, well, we don't bring in money. I'm like, yeah, you don't bring in money because you guys are showing this fan base that you're cheapening out. Why would they come out and support you if you're, charging 25 plus for a ticket while putting an inferior product out there? Like, who wanted to see this team in 2021? That was a terrible product. I still went to a lot of games just because I love baseball, but it was the most miserable I've ever been at the stadium. That stadium was completely empty. These games were not
You
competitive.
probably
They
were
were
able to
not
move
entertaining.
a lot closer
Oh
than
yeah,
you
I ended up at the
actually.
bottom section every single time I went there. Like, nobody cared, and it's just one of those things where the whole time I was just like, this is just embarrassing. Like, we have millions of people here. It was 8 million people. This is one of the largest metropolis in the United States, the eighth largest metropolis in the United States, and still, like, you're complaining or saying that you can't bring in fans, but we've had a pretty large attendance as soon as this team started to show interest that they were interested in winning. When teams do that, people show up. Look at San Diego. For the longest time, they were just like not interested in competing or winning until Preller started finally putting some money, and then the fan base showed up. And they've had how many days? Brandon, was it 2 years now of straight
Yep.
sellouts?
At least
I
it
mean,
might be 3.
it might be a little bit difficult for the Diamondbacks to do that just because of the heat here. It's not the same as San Diego. It's not like, you're going to be able to go into a beautiful stadium with, with amazing weather every single time. Here, it's like, it's hot at the stadium with the, lack of funding and everything. So it's just a little bit harder to be able to go to a Dbacks game compared to some other places. Maybe it doesn't seem worth it. But we've seen the stadiums get really full when this team is trying to compete. And there's a reason why this team had, down near 30-something million people every single day during those Randy Johnson years. It was because they were winning. They were winning and they were trying to win. They were spending money. And as soon as they stopped doing that, fans stopped showing up. And you can call them fair weather all you want. But when the ownership and the team is telling you, hey, we don't care, why would the fans care? Scott Mack, welcome in. He says, hello from Metro Manila, Sarai the Super Typhoon. I did see something about that. Was it about a week or two ago? Crazy typhoon hit the Philippines. Hope you stayed safe. Hope everybody else stayed safe around you, because that's scary. Luckily, I haven't had terrible weather when I've traveled. I've just had some really cold rain, and my last trip was just I saw the sun 2 days in three
Oh,
weeks, which was not
that's
fun.
sounds depressing.
But oh yeah, it was. Yeah, I was lethargic until the afternoons every single day. Like it was not great, but I mean, still enjoyed myself. But um, yeah, overall, I guess Brandon, like, what I guess what do you feel about what Corbin Barrels is saying here? Do you think it is backwards thinking, or do you see the logic that they're using in this case about not spending because they don't feel like they're making enough money or something?
I think they have changed their tune on the whole payroll situation. I know y'all don't want to hear it, but you can thank Torrey for that. The fact that he was able to get these guys to play hard in the last 60 games of the year, maybe it did show to Kendrick. Okay, maybe we're not so far off. Maybe if we do spend, I don't know, 100 million on contracts, maybe we can be right there again. Because, like you said, like they actually financially had a good year, even though they didn't make the playoffs. Like I know with all the games that I went to, most of the games were packed unless they were playing like just a really shitty team, which that wasn't most of the games. So the place was packed pretty well. So I think the fan base does want to see this team succeed. I think the fan base is dedicated. They want to see a good product, so you have to put a good product on the field. Like it's kind of like you said. Like, does the owner have to spend for fans to go, or should fans just show up regardless? So I hope that they do spend a little. I'm not looking for them to sign three guys for $1 billion. Of course, I like that's just that Ken Kendrick does not have that kind of money. Regardless of what other fan bases say that all owners can spend, I'm not talking $1 billion. I'm talking sign. All right, let's see. Like get a third baseman, a first baseman, get at least two starting pitchers, two high end relievers. So 6 or 7 guys. I don't know, maybe 200 to 300 million there, if you can. So we'll see. Like, I'm always curious as to with Kendrick, is it he doesn't want to have a high yearly payroll, or he doesn't want to have a lot of money tied up in the future?
Yeah,
That's what I'm
I think
always curious about with some of these owners.
yeah, I think that's the key here. We've talked about it before about the Dodgers. Everyone who has said, like, even the writers themselves who say, like, oh, well, any team could have signed Yamamoto, any team could have signed Shohei, any team could have signed Freddie and Mookie. I'm like, yeah, but not all of them could have signed all of these guys. Like, it's just hard because the finances are just not there in general. And it's also a lot of money to be tied up for 10 years. I mean, in 10 years from now, who knows how many contracts the Dodgers are going to have on the books. You could still be talking about $1 billion payroll or 500, $1 billion in quotes because of the loopholes and everything. But they could be spending $500 million in 10 years from now still on dead contracts in being included in those other contracts. And the Dodgers are obviously not going to sell the team because it's part of the Guggenheim group. But Ken Kendrick is not a young guy anymore. He's getting up there in age. At some point, he might want to retire. He might want to be able to tie up these finances that he's had an issue with. Because we saw it with San Diego, Preller, right? Like their owner, AJ Preller.
No, no, no.
Oh,
So
their
he's
GM,
their GM. You're talking about
GM. Sorry,
Seidler.
yeah, Seidler, Peter
Oh,
Seidler. Yeah, the he
R.I.P.
died.
Yeah.
He died with this team basically being in massive debt, and that's why his sons are, I guess, were fighting. I think custody for the team. It was just some weird situation there, especially with the ownership groups and everything else. And what happens with Ken Kendrick when he reaches that point? Does he want to leave this team in disarray where they're suddenly infighting because nobody's being able to approve for the new ownership group? Is he going to sell the team before? That's why it's not just Ken Kendrick, but it's a lot of these other owners where they know at some point they're going to either have to retire or sell the team because they're getting too old or they don't want to die, and then their kids aren't going to be able to take over the team or anything like that. And these teams are worth too much. I mean, we've seen teams sign or be sold for $3-4 billion. So one way to be able to get the maximum amount of money is to not have these crazy outstanding contracts. And if the Diamondbacks were to overspend and have $200-300 million on the books for the next 10 years, the ownership group that's coming in, they're not going to be like, all right, we'll give you $4 billion. They're going to be like $2.5 billion, because you're immediately putting us in debt because of these huge contracts. So they're going to have to either take on the contracts, or they're going to have to sell a ton of these players. And I think that's just one of those conversations that people don't want to have, because it's an ugly conversation and it puts into question everything. I mean, look at the Orioles ownership group that just came in. They didn't have a lot of money on the books, other than what's his face, Chris
Davis.
Chris Davis. That was basically it. And this whole thing was about them finally having an ownership group that cares and is going to spend. They did nothing. They spent no money in the offseason despite owning the team now. And just not every team is going to be like that, obviously, but who knows if the Diamondbacks could end up being like that as well if they have all these outstanding debts and contracts. So it's such an ugly part of baseball, and I think that's something that's going to end up being in the CBA negotiations, kind of just maybe trying to have some security for the teams, because or else they're going to be like the Las Vegas A's now, because they just couldn't secure funding for that team. So all that's we have all that left to see what's going to happen. This is going to be an exciting offseason. I think there's a lot of news that's going to happen. I think soon enough, I think some guys are going to be trying to get paid sooner rather than later, because with the winter meetings coming up, like as a player, if a team's looking for a left fielder, once the winter meetings come, they might just trade for a player to cover like your left field or something like that. So guys like Kyle Tucker could be moving on sooner than later. So do you have any final thoughts on anything that we've talked about, Brandon?
No, I'm just very curious to see what happens with Gallen. Like you said, the deadline is the 18th, which is a week from Tuesday. So just over a week here to see, does he accept it? Does he decline it? I think our offseason could get really interesting if he does accept it before, just accepts the qualifying offer. I personally don't think he does. We'll see if Mike Hazen is a man of his word and he does deal prospects to improve this team. I don't think that he will. You can call me pessimistic, but he's never done it really. He's always gotten to get guys without actually costing him too much. So.
Yeah, I agree with you. And so I just want to thank everybody coming in here. William, Scott, Corbin, Dink Lemon, Red Sox Nation, Trepinator, William Disruptive. Yeah, so I want to thank you guys all for coming in here. We will see you guys next time, and hopefully we get some bigger Dbacks news. And if we do, then we can always go live on those days as well. So see you guys next time, and take care. Bye.
Under the lights, the game goes down. Desert heat, but we own this town. Brennan Gabe on the call, with Josh in the back, bringing it all. Fastballs hum, the bats ignite. 9 innings deep, we fight all night. Wins and losses, highs and lows, we break it down, yeah, that's how it goes. Dbacks dispatch, turn it